Well, good morning, everyone. Hope all of you are doing well this morning. Yes, you read the title right. I shouldn't be alive. But before I get into that, I'd like to share a little story, something that happened to me the other day. I kind of found interesting, and it's been weighing on my mind ever since. You see, I was down at the Branson landing. I was filming some footage. I'd walk from one bench to the next, sit down, then I would pan around, get some footage of the people walking by, some of the shops, some of the stuff like that. And as I was doing that, I kept noticing this older couple. I'd say they were in their late 60s, early 70s. They were watching me really intently. Every time I would go somewhere, they would follow me, but they never approached me. I always wondered what they were doing. I've had other people follow me like this and watch me when I'm filming, no big deal, but there was something different about this. Well, when I started to change the battery out on my camera, I noticed a little lady was coming over to me, and her husband followed her. They came up to me and introduced themselves, and sweet little couple. And they said that they had seen me filming, saw the back of my shirt with my logo and website on there. So they went to my website and looked at it for a minute, and watched a minute or two of one of my videos. They asked me, they says, "Why do you do this?" I looked at the little lady and I said, "Ma'am," I said, none of us live forever. We've had a lot of loss in our family. I had a grandparent on either side of my family who died of Alzheimer's. My mother was killed in a car wreck, and both of my wife's parents have both passed. And so I said, what I'm trying to do is, not only do I want to remember the places I've been, I want to preserve the memories of all the people walking by, how things were, and how all of us as a family reacted to each other. And we talked for a few more minutes, and then they went on their way, and I kept on filming. And I woke up this morning thinking about that, and it's something that's been weighing on my mind, and I wanted to share it with you. And I also decided that I had never shared my life story with anyone on video, so I want to do that real fast. So please bear with me, and I hope I don't bore you, but I want to share this and have this on video so my kids can look back and see it when I'm not here anymore. A little bit about me. I was born in 1970 in a little tiny town, actually is a village because there's less than 300 people there, called Saline, Louisiana. My mother was an entertainer. She was a singer. She played the piano, the organ, also the auto harp, as well as doing a few little comedy routines from now and then. She performed all over the South. My dad would drive her pretty much every weekend somewhere different. So I was born and grew up in the entertainment business. 1976, my mother started a travel agency based out of our home, and for 21 years we traveled all over the United States, taking senior citizens on bus tours, traveling and having a great time. In 1984, I received my first real set of drums. I studied everybody. I watched every video, watched every performer I could, and before long, I was on stage as my mother's drummer. Well, that went on for several years, and one night, something had happened during the day. I don't remember what it was, but something had happened, and I'd had a really bad day. And before it was time for us to go on stage, my mother looked at me and she said, I can see that you've had a bad day. But she said, I want you to remember something. She said, look out there at all of those people sitting in those seats, waiting on you to get out here and play those drums for them. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, think about this. She said, you've had a rough day, but so have they. And every one of them have paid their hard-earned money so they could come out here and watch you play the drums and entertain them for a few minutes to help them forget about their problems and their worries. And so she said, they paid their hard-earned money to have you entertain them. So when we start on that stage, you forget all about your hard times and your troubles and worries for the day, and you make sure those people have a good time. I said, yes, ma'am. And that's what I've done ever since. Well, in 1993, all of our family moved to Branson, Missouri, and what's now my wife came with us, and we just fell in love with the place. Now, being a drummer, a sound man, tech crew, photographer, videographer, all that kind of stuff led me into several positions that I normally wouldn't have been in. I had the chance to work with people like Wayne Newton, Johnny Cash, Ray Stevens, Kenny Rogers, Charlie Pride, the Riverbend Music Show, which a local show here that was very popular, and also the Blackwood family. You might remember them from the background vocals with Elvis Presley. Then that went on for several years until a life-changing event happened in October of 1997. That was the month that my mother got killed in a car wreck. Everything changed that day. For a few months afterwards, I became a recluse. I didn't come out of the house except maybe to go to the mailbox and check the mail and come back. Then, one day it dawned on me what I was doing to myself. I had to get out. I had to go back to doing things that I had been doing before. So I started running sound again. This time, I put myself completely into my work. I was working anywhere from 8 to 16 hours a day, sometimes even more, 6-7 days a week. I was doing that for the whole entire season for Branson. And after a couple of years of doing that, it dawned on me I was neglecting my family. I was working more than I was spending time with them. I decided it was time for me to back away from the music industry a little bit and stay at home more, spend more time with my wife and my kids. You know, I'd been neglecting them for years, and that wasn't fair to them, so I backed away from the music and got a regular 8-hour per day job. I was at home in the mornings to see my kids off to school. I was at home just right after they got home from school, and I could spend the afternoons and evenings with them. Now, this worked out great. After 10 years, though, that caught up with me. July the 14th of 2018, thank God Jacob, my son, was there. He was 14 at the time. He saved my life. He came out of the bathroom and he saw that something was going on with me and couldn't understand what it was. He was seeing me as I was blacking out and coming to, blacking out and coming to. He watched me for a couple minutes and then he called Brenda at work and said, "We got to take Dad to the hospital. Something's wrong with him." Sure enough, it was. I developed blood clots in my leg. One of those blood clots had broken away and gone and stuck between my heart and my lungs. That's called a pulmonary embolism. My left lung was completely blocked. My right lung was about 95% blocked. I had to fight every way I possibly could to be able to breathe. But thankfully, Jacob was there with me and he kept me alive. Every time he would see me start to go out, he would start asking me questions and start shaking me and keep me aware of things. It took Brenda about 10 to 15 minutes to get home, and somehow or another they managed to get me in the truck. Jacob was still doing everything he could to keep me from blacking out totally. Now, I don't remember much about that, but I do remember one thing that made me fight harder than anything has ever made me fight before. You know, they say that when you're dying, you see your life flash in front of your face. Well, that's true. I did see my life flash before my eyes, but it wasn't my past, it was the future. Now, I can't explain what I'm fixing to say, but this happened and I can remember it just as if it happened 5 minutes ago. I remember looking up, and what I saw was Brenda and the 3 kids, all arm in arm, as tight as they could be to each other, and all 4 of them were looking down at something, crying. Now, I couldn't figure out what they were looking at, but I knew something was bad wrong. All of a sudden, I wasn't looking up anymore, I was looking down. I was looking down at them, and I could see what they were looking at then. I was looking at them from behind, looking down, and I could see myself lying in a coffin. That's when I started fighting really hard. The next thing that I do remember is I remember waking up in the hospital room the next day, only me and the doctor there. And the doctor was holding up his hand just like this when I came to. And he said, "Welcome back, Mr. Dyson. Any fingers I'm holding up?" I said, "Yes, you're holding up 3 fingers. He said, "Well, you're now one of the 3%ers. I looked at him kind of crazy and I'm like, "Do what?" He said, 97 out of 100 people that come in here like you came in here, they go they end up in the morgue. Only 3 out of those 100 walk out. You better count yourself lucky, because somebody upstairs isn't through with you yet. Well, there was a second eye-opener. For the next 8 or 9 months, I had test after test after test. I had to go to the doctor, have MRIs, CT scans, any kind of test you can imagine, and things were doing good. But on August 26th of 2019, I closed the door on our van, and I thought something fell out. So I squatted down, and I looked down to see what it was, but there was nothing there. I stood up, and when I stood up, it hit me again. Somehow or another, I managed to get myself into the front seat of the van, but when I hit the seat, it felt like here was a seat, but I just kept on sinking all the way down, farther and farther and farther. Brenda took me on to the hospital, and they told me that part of the original blood clot had broken away, and this time it had stuck in both my lungs. They showed me the results of the test, and on my left lung, you could see 16 or 17 spots. Those were all blood clots, and there were 12 or 13 on the right side. They told me this time I was lucky to be alive too, because they had only given me a 20% chance of survival. Yeah, there was a third eye opener. After getting all the test results back, the doctors called me in to let me know what they'd found. From the 2 rounds of blood clots in my lungs, I now have lung damage and scar tissue in my lungs from that. And they also showed me what had been wrong with my back. I've got several crippling lower back problems that they couldn't understand how I was still walking. And on top of that, I have scoliosis and arthritis throughout my back. That was another eye-opener. But I'm careful of what I do now. I'm really careful, really conscientious of what I do and how I walk, even though I walk a little funny. But I do that because you never know when my back's going to go out. And if it does go out, I could be down flat on my back in bed for 2 or 3, 4 or 5 days, or 2 or 3 months. You never know. So I'm really conscious about that. Due to these results and these things happening to me, I'm now classified as disabled. Well, what happened? Depression set in. For months, I'd stay in bed, wouldn't go out. I was in a bad mood, grouchy with everybody, and just couldn't seem to get myself out of that depression. And one day I was on the phone with my brother. He and I were talking, and I mentioned something about the $1 Million Highway in Colorado. And I said, I'd like to see a video, or I'd like to see a TV show, actually, that I could explain it and show Brenda. He said, well, why don't you go on YouTube? I bet you someone's on YouTube that's got that video recorded. Well, I had never turned on YouTube, didn't know exactly how to work it or what it was all about. So as soon as we hung up the phone, I turned on YouTube, figured it out, and I found several videos on the $1 Million Highway. Well, I was hooked. Talking about binge watching. That's all I watched. The whole time I was awake, all I would watch is YouTube travel videos. I found several people that I liked. I'd watch their videos, just one right after the other. Drove my wife and kids crazy. But somehow or another, that was bringing me out of the depression that I was in, and that's what I needed. That's when I realized what I needed to do. I'd always promised my wife and kids that I would take them to show them some of the things in this country that I had seen with my own 2 eyes. Now, with my health issues and Brenda having bad knees, we aren't able to travel and shoot as many videos as we'd like, but we're going to shoot videos and preserve those memories every chance that we get.